Good evening, folks. Welcome to the old session from the Wise Asylum. Ooh, interesting stuff tonight. But more importantly, I've been going on, haven't I, for a while about this concept that's been created by not the church, but the Vatican corporate state, to which all governments adhere to in this New World Order. So it's pretty clear that the Vatican corporate state is the New World Order. As the Reformers said way back in the day, they knew that it had been decided that they were going to use the Vatican system to pull in this New World Order. Now, there is a separation between the Vatican corporate state and the church. They are not the same. It's parading as the church, but it's got nothing to do with the church, which is why Malachi Martin said many years ago in the 90s it's gone underground. That has to be understood fully. So it's not the church that's enabling this New World Order, because the two are opposites. It's the specific state that was created under Mussolini in 1929. And then Vatican II was installed over the church to put that system, which pulled the bishops, the cardinals, the priests, etc., into the Jesuit system. And I've said, and I've been trying to get across to you how important it is that people recognise that the term human is a concept. It's nothing to do with the biblical tradition at all. So you're completely outside of the biblical tradition in its entirety if you are coming forward as a human. And of course, all these immigrants that are piling into the West are coming in under human rights. What they don't realise is they've actually declared themselves monsters and are flooding Europe and America, etc., etc., which gives the right for this corporate system to annihilate you as and when. And of course, you can see the same's already taking place in 2020. This is where the permission is given, is you're coming forward under a concept because you're ignorant of the facts of the matter, and therefore you are contracted by definition of the fact that you are coming forward as a human. And you all need to look at so many of the books or the programming, etc., that's been going on for what? Let's say 100 years maybe. That this term human has been shoved everywhere so that everybody now today thinks they're a human. So I've got a very interesting video to show you, which he actually goes through Ballantyne's dictionary and explains exactly what I've been telling you, but it goes into a little bit more detail just to help cement it into your minds that really this human thing is, you don't want anything to do with it. And, you know, you get into the catechism as the Catholic Church, and it's very clear that the human is the concept created while in the womb. Once mum goes and starts playing out with the midwife, the priestess for the temple, that concept's created, and it's off it goes to the Vatican. And then you have a few more shenanigans to do, registration, etc., to actually put the body of the baby in the ship as cargo. And then, of course, you're going to school and it's every morning your name and it's yes, miss, teaching and programming you to identify as that name. It's clear as a bell, crystal clear today, to me, what's happened, and I know it is to a lot of you guys that have been watching and following this stuff. But, of course, the majority of people have got no clue about this. No clue whatsoever. So we'll have a look at that video. It's quite lengthy, but it's worth every single second for you to absorb it fully, so you can see that what I've been saying isn't some fallacy, some invention. It's real, and it's the very means of taking you off the biblical tradition in its entirety, because you will never see the word human in any scriptural tradition, not just the Bible. But we know the entire world is run on the foundation of the Bible, whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant whether you're religious, what you believe. The structure of the world is the Bible, and that's it. And once you start to recognize that, you start to recognize that the Bible is actually a book of law, as well as it can be assimilated into astrology, into chemistry, etc., etc. We've gone through this stuff, so you're all well aware of it. But exceptionally interesting video that we're going to look at very shortly. And then I want to... So basically the website of mine, there's some major updates going on in Switzerland, and I have to get my website in sync with that. And there's been one or two plugins that I've had over the years that actually will not suffice for this upgrade. So I'm having to go through the website in the back end and prepare it so that it can continue on this upgraded system. So I've been going through right from the back end of the website, coming through slowly on reports, and it's even I forget what kind of stuff I've done in the past, because most of these reports on the website from the early stuff, I mean, I wrote these in 2008 to 2013 and then represented them in 2015 when I started this one. And there's some exceptionally interesting reports on there. And I can understand why the powers that be really don't like it, because it's information that they want you to forget. It's all the information that we were all discussing back in the day. And what I came across today was the European Centre for European Reform. And it's quite a lengthy piece, but it basically shows you that this idea of ever coming out of Europe, for us here on Blighty, was only a stepping stone, because they knew they had a majority of people in the nation that were anti-European Union. Well, we can see now with the rhetoric coming out of this Bolshevik government that they're clearly talking about putting us back in. Now, they're obfuscating it by saying, oh, well, it might start in 10 years. Bullshit. They're going to try and do it as quickly as they can, especially if they can get these younger ones, as he said in his manifesto, and he's going to give 16-year-olds the vote this year. So they're fully intent on making sure that these younger generations that don't know their ass from their elbow, yet think they're amazing and fantastic, the vote enough to push us back into the EU. Brexit was only there to satisfy the sceptics, the people that knew and know exactly what it means to be in the European Union. It's an end of England as a separate entity from the entire European mass that England's gone to war with so many times, because we have a major conflict of ideology. We like freedom. The European Union and the nations in it have never liked freedom. This is why the Church, the Vatican, etc., has been so powerful and important in the European Union for a very long time, be that Byzantine Rome or indeed Vatican Rome. And we can see, it's completely taken over the US, begun in the Civil War. After the Civil War, it was basically the Holy See that took over America. Rothschilds being the court financiers for that system. They were the ones who got the Federal Reserve in, and people have started to miss the point that you see Rothschilds, you see Jews, you're not seeing Holy See families, you're not seeing Rome. And that's basically what happened in the US. Then we had the two world wars, and of course the third one has either been as the Quiet War, or they're about to get it going for that perpetual war as described in 1984, the book. So it was always, it's never been the intention to allow Blighty to not join the EU. And I've said before that the EU construct was a London creation. It was created in the city. And of course the city are the ones that have benefited from the EU because of the taxes that they claim and they collect. So we look at European Union and think, oh, it's the... No, it's the same bunch that have always been the benefactors to, or rather beneficiaries to the inner city of London. And remember, they're about to move that to Kazakhstan if they can get the chance. And I think that'll be after the war. It'll be during the war and after the war. But this human concept, it's so important that people grasp the metal with it, because that is the problem. And in the Catechism of the Catholic Church that we looked at the other week, it's very clear that once the human concept's created in the womb, then the Vatican has to give it the rights of personage. And here we are today. We all understand that, don't we? So person's important in the sense that we need to know that we're not it, but it is the principle in the debt system as we are the agent. That's the reversion we're trying to create. But ultimately, behind that, the personage itself is the concept of the human. And of course, it's classed as a sea monster, as you're going to see when we watch this video. So we'll get cracking on with it, but I'll just have a look who's bobbed in, and we'll, because I left it a bit late last week. Lex says, hello. Evening, Sean. Hello, folks, to the Wise Sound. Evening, Lex. Benefactor. Hi, Sean and all. Hello, Benefactor. Slipknot says 1.618. All right, Sean, Jacqueline, and everyone. All right, Slipknot. Jane Elliott says, evening, Sean and all. Evening, Jane. Paul says, good evening, Sean and fellow inmates. Evening, Paul. Jerry says, hey, Sean. All in the Wise Asylum. Good evening to you. PY Music. Hello, Paul. Good evening, Sean and all. Good evening to you, Paul. Cos 1973 gives us the wavy hand and no gigs on. Evening, Cos. And Bill Bob gives it the clapping hands. Evening to you all. Let's crack on. Let's just get straight into this. Very interesting indeed. So, without further ado, wait a minute, it might help.
Ballantines is the law dictionary, I believe,
Now, how do I...
that Congress uses. Most everyday lawyers and stuff uses Black's Law Dictionary, but Ballantines, I believe, is the version of a law dictionary that the U.S. Congress uses. So this is from Ballantines Law Dictionary, 1948. Now keep in mind kind of what Humpty Dumpty's talking about. As we change the meaning of words over time, we dump down the society. And in a lot of the law dictionaries I've noticed, I've got several versions of law dictionaries, and I've used Bouvier's from the 1856 online edition, and you can kind of see some differences there. But I have several versions of Black's Law Dictionary, and they haven't really changed the definition that much. But what they've done is they've used obfuscation through more convoluted definitions so that it's harder for you to grasp the actual meaning, if you're just a common everyday Joe. And that's what's sad. So here we go back to 1948 in the dictionary that Congress uses, Ballantines Law Dictionary, for this definition. Human being is defined as follows. Sea monster. What? From the same dictionary. Okay, so now we go to monster. Monster is defined, quote, a human being by birth, but in some part resembling a lower animal. What? Okay, that's kind of weird. This is an unusual definition, but like all law dictionaries on this subject, a non-definition. It only states that a human being is a higher animal. It is not found anywhere in Scripture that a Christian man or woman is an animal or part of the animal kingdom. This being the case, then, what exactly is a human being? From the Oxford New English Dictionary of 1901, human is defined as, in the third position, belonging or relative to man as distinguished from God or superhuman beings, pertaining to the sphere or faculties of man with implication of limitation or inferiority, mundane, secular, often opposed to divine. Okay, secular. Being the important word here, we look to the multi-definitions in the 1992 Random House Webster's College Dictionary. Secular, adjective, 1, of or pertaining to worldly things or to things not regarded as sacred, temporal. 2, not relating to or concerned with religion, opposed to sacred. 3, concerned with non-religious subjects, not belonging to a religious order, not bound by monastic vows. Now, if you recall in some previous videos, I kind of talked about some of this. The other form of law that we're talking about where your freedoms come from comes from here. And most people would ascribe this to be a religious book, but I also have a video out here in this playlist telling you what religion really is. It's not an ideology, it's what you do in service to others and in service to your God, your sovereign power, your lawgiver, your ruling authority, whether that's the state or the God of creation. Okay, all right, so let's see here. Could it be that human means ungodly? And we just saw all this, worldly stuff, temporal stuff, not concerned with religion, not concerned with religious order, not bound by monastic vows. What are your monastic vows? Your pledges of allegiance to this other foreign sovereign that has this law book. Okay. Could it be that human means ungodly? From the same dictionary, a look at a combination of two, secular humanism. Noun, any set of beliefs that promotes human values without specific allusion to religious doctrines. And secularism, noun, secular spirit or tendency, especially a system of political or social philosophy that rejects all forms of religious faith or worship. Now again, religion is what you do in service to your sovereign power and to your neighbors, and how you provide foreign aid to others, other nations foreign to yours in their time of need. Faith is allegiance, fidelity. Worship is homage, obeisance, obedience to the laws of your sovereign. These have very specific secular and meanings of law, depending on how you behave to your God, which is your sovereign power. The state is either your God or the God of creation is your God. You have a choice. Which one? The view that public education or other matters of civil policy should be conducted without the influence of religious beliefs. Oh, if only people knew what religion was. Public school is a form of religion. It's a form of, you don't want to educate your children. They're really not your children, excuse me. They're the state's children, and you send them to 10th place public schools because those are the state's kids going to the state's school. He's the father. The state is the father of the children, and they're going to the state schools. So that's a religious benefit within the public religious sphere of the civil state.
Just to break there, it's not actually the state that's the father, it's the Pope. Papa. Now, of course, this guy that's claiming to be a Pope isn't, is he? He's a Jesuit. We know this. So he's the father of the human concept. And it's so important that immigrants recognise that this is what they've been... all this moving around that has been going on with these immigrants has been done so by the very empire that these people decry. And you've been moved about as humans. Now, if you watch some of the rabbis speaking on these, in their speeches, just listening to them, it is the language of the animal. It's so basic, it's so degenerate in its nature. And as I've said before, these imams are actually operating for this same system. The agreements have already been made in Kazakhstan between these leaders. And we looked at Sabotage Zevi last week. This is why these imams, rabbis, and popish people today, that's what they're operating for, not your original doctrine. And of course, if you've not read your doctrines, you're going to be, you're dependent on being told what they mean. Especially for Muslims, it's so important that you recognise that your Sharia is not formed as you believe by right of the Quran. It's formed by the rabbis and their interpretation of the Quran. So, and I've said this before, the first point Gabriel gives you when you come to the Quran is that it makes it clear. Everything you need, down to the detail, is in this book. You don't go outside of it if you want to understand that book. It's not saying if you want to understand everything in the entire universe. It's specific to, if you want to study this book, then everything you need is in this book, to the detail. But what do the imams do? They go to the hadiths. So straight away, they've shown you that they've breached the commandment of the book. But they're forming your Sharia, which is what you're submitting to. Now, my problem is, I know a lot of Muslims, and I know the Muslims I know do not think the same as these imams are speaking. Now, I also know what they're speaking is in the Quran to a degree, but it's the way they're defining what they're reading that is the problem. But of course, most Muslims have not read it, they don't know any different. So my point is that the homegrown Muslims here in the West, from my experience, are not in any way, shape or form an emanation of what this shit is that these imams are pumping out. But my point is, if you do not distinguish yourself from it, then you're going to be seen as it. And we know what the agenda is. The agenda is to get the Muslims and the Christians to go to war. And you look at this stuff like what was going on in Germany last night when they had thousands of Muslims in Berlin screaming and demanding a caliphate in Germany. Do you really think that's going to work? You know what I'm saying? It's not going to work, is it? Because the entire structure of the state isn't Islamic, is it? So if you're going to butt heads with the state, you're belligerent from the get-go. The rhetoric that you're presenting is animal-based. It's so basic in its nature. And you come across here and you're claiming human rights. So by definition of your ignorance, you are cementing the fact to this new world order that you are indeed a sea monster. And it's so important that people start to use your intellect in relation to what's going on. Because if you're just playing with the emotion, you're just going to get pulled into it because you don't know any different. And for people of my race and my culture, you really need to recognise this personage, but behind that is this human. It's very important that you recognise that. And all this legal system is based against personage, the fiction. And this is why you're trapped in it. It really is. It's not about today. Well, let's put it this way. They want to present it as the sides are differing religious viewpoints and rights from them religions, when in fact what it actually is sane, intelligent and moral people versus this entire raft of shit that's coming from every orifice. That's where you've got to see the battle line, really, if we're gonna move out of this garbage that they're pushing at an alarming rate, let's say.
That public religion is financed through compelled taxation on property taxes because you don't own that property. It's a tribute. Ouch. So you're practicing religion, but you don't call it religion. You call it, public education or social welfare. All these social justice warriors out here are these secular human beings that are monsters, that are lower, resembling a lower animal, that look to the state as their God only and want the state to provide all the benefits of a father to them. And they want to destroy any kind of recognition of this God and the rights and the law that go along here if you follow the responsibilities, obligations, and duties this law imposes upon you. Remember, kids, rights follow responsibilities. If you don't perform on your responsibilities, your duties and obligations under the sovereign that you've pledged allegiance to by keeping that law, then you don't get access to those rights. Where do your unalienable and inalienable rights originate? Right here. Under that civil system, you just get privileges, immunities, franchises called civil rights.
And free money is the pinnacle of screaming for the benefits of the state, which is ultimately under the Vatican corporate state and whose father is Pope Francis. So you're screaming to your father. You in your belief system, you think you're against it, but you're actually begging for his benefits, his free fucking money. You're begging him for it, and you think that how can it end any other than bang, you're gone, after they've used you for something first. We're getting to that point now where I've said all the time, I'm always trying to create a path for peace, but ultimately you've got more and more of these immigrants now flooded our systems, and they're now the ones on the street, praying on the fucking roads, talking absolute bollocks. all of a sudden now telling us you can't have dogs. They're telling us that your daughters have to cover up. What utter shit. You think that's going to wash, but because there's so many of them now, you native Muslims, you've no voice. You're being dragged by your neck because you're still looking for this free money. So you're bound to this system for the money, for the benefits. That's where you're trapped, and you don't think you're trapped. You think you're about to get something fantastic and great. You're not. You're being used. You're being used in such a way that there's only going to be one end that's written in your Quran, and that's you're going to be wiped off the face of the earth. Because I'm a moderate guy, I'm an intelligent guy, and I know a lot of Muslims, but I can see how this is playing. And when it's difficult to listen to these imams talk absolute shit on my land and telling me what I have to think, what I have to do, how I should bring up my offspring, I have to be honest with you guys, it's pissing me off. Now, there's a lot of people like me in the West who are the quiet ones, not the ones that are running out spitting, shouting, throwing bricks and screaming like your Tommy Robinson's brigade. We're talking about genuine males who are English. We know what England is. We grew up seeing what England was. And those are the people you don't want to get upset. But I can tell you now, if it's upsetting me, I'm guaranteeing to you now, it's upsetting them as well. And this isn't going to go the way that you think it's going to go. I can assure you of it. And the fact that this system, this state, through these Bolsheviks especially, is encouraging you, it's because they're acting as your father. And they have an agenda that they want you to carry out, because the other agenda, it's not what you think. You're not being given a caliphate. You're just being given the idea that everything supports you. But there's something else going on. And of course, Trump is more than likely going to get in. And it's like, I don't sit here going, oh, I'm just watching the game play out. Because I'm not fixed in it, if you will. I'm not fixed one side over and another. Do you know what I'm saying? But I'm very aware that self-defence and looking after your own is very important. And it's a right afforded to you by the first father, if you will, yeah? The true creator. We are allowed and we're expected to deal with the wicked man. So I'm aware of that. But I'm watching this and I can see what's going to happen. And so I'm watching Trump and I'm thinking he's going to come in. It's just going to flip. It's going to flip like you won't believe. And it's the more this nonsense comes out of your banks or mosques in this way, and you natives born here say nothing, the worse that flip's going to be. It's really going to be horrendous. I mean, it's going to be horrendous for everybody, don't get me wrong. I'm not just picking out on one particular side. There aren't going to be any winners here because the aim is to cause the chaos out of which they intend to form the New World Order. I've also noticed not just store-boughts now, but a lot of these freight wagons, on the roads are now taking up the 8-pointed star chaos. I don't know whether you've noted it yourself, but there's a couple of firms now, as well as store-boughts, that I've seen have all of a sudden got this 8-pointed star on their trailers. And so you can see what's coming.
Okay, so in conjunction with this, from Collier's New Dictionary of the English Language, 1928, humanitarian is defined, noun, a philanthropist, an anti-Trinitarian who rejects the doctrine of Christ's divinity, a perfectionist. This is what religious goofballs call legalistic, meaning you can earn salvation by works. Now, nobody who follows the Bible, even if you keep the Torah, you're not keeping the Torah for your salvation. You're keeping the Torah after you have been promised salvation as your obedience to the sovereign that you're now looking to. If you went and expatriated and joined another body politic, would you, from being accepted into that civil family, let's say you're an American and you want to expatriate and become a Panamanian or a German or whatever, if you expatriate and get naturalized as a Panamanian, are you now expected to keep the laws of Panama? Of course you are, because that's your God now. Okay, so anybody who rejects the doctrine of Christ's divinity, they're trying to perfect themselves. That's what humanism is. It's we're gonna be God. Remember, what's the motto of the United States? E pluribus unum. Out of many, we are the one. We are the supreme being.
Ooh, if that wasn't a snap back to reality, because some of y'all just be so much in this freaking low vibrational matrix where y'all just forget what the fuck we really at. Because some of y'all don't even know. Y'all just living in this loophole of just fucking existing and trying to fit in, all right?
Let's take a look at this article that was written many years ago by Randy Lee in the Christian Journal Society News. To be or not to be a human being. From Ballantyne's Law Dictionary. Now, Ballantyne's is the law dictionary, I believe, that Congress uses. Most everyday lawyers and stuff uses Black's Law Dictionary, but Ballantyne's, I believe, is the version of a law dictionary that the U.S. Congress uses.
The U.S. Congress. So how important is it that the Americans recognize that? This is the Bible. This is the definitions that the U.S. Congress uses. This is how it sees you Americans. So what's happening with all these hurricanes? It's because you're all humans. It doesn't matter. You can evangelicalize all day. It's not the point. If you don't understand the rule book that they're operating to, you're in deep shit. Everybody's in deep shit because of it's ignorance. Everybody's been off playing with yourself. It's all about me, and you missed the whole game. Because this is how we used to understand things. We were intelligent. We were educated. We had a good, sound comprehension of what it was the Bible was trying to teach us. Now, you didn't have to go to church every week to do that. You just have to read the damn thing and understand that is one set of laws, the highest set of laws, you might say, in the world, not so much to the earth itself, but in the world that you live in, the fake Satan-run gig, the Bible is the uber law. Above that, then, you've got the father of the beginnings, which is Genesis 1. Okay, and so basically we've got the Elohim running absolute riot. And if you're savvy with the Norse tradition, and I know probably a lot of people aren't, but Odin's game, if you've watched the Vikings, all this, they're all wanting to go to Valhalla. Why? Well, because Odin is choosing the greatest warriors, and only the greatest warriors, and to enter Valhalla for this final end of time, when the realm in which all these Elohim exist is going to be annihilated, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so it's the Elohim within themselves, their battles, or the Barbello as they were originally called. That's what we're living under. So many of these religious divisions that we're existing in now, or these Barbello gods battling for supremacy. And the two major gods in this fight have been Yahweh and a chap called Hubal. Now, Hubal's a very interesting character, because when you start to look into the history of Mecca and the cube, well, before it was classed as Allah, it was Hubal's cube. And this guy, this deity comes out of Jordan, and he was a Nabatean deity, and the Moabites were the peoples that worship this god called Hubal. Now, if you are a Muslim, then you can study this stuff from within your own doctrines, because there are many thesis on it from ancient Islamic and Arabic scholars who show you this. It's so important. And then you can, when he gets right into that, this Hubal is actually Baal. That's who he actually was originally. So he's had 3 shift name changes. And it's so important that people start to recognise this stuff. It really is. So the Kaaba was built for Hubal. And through what happened, it shifted to another name. It's ignorance, people, that is dragging everybody into this quagmire of absolute hell. It's ridiculous, honestly. But this human concept, I've been talking about it now for a while. That's the concept that's created the moment mum goes to the health visitor, to the hospital, whomever it is. As soon as that's done, it's reported off to the Vatican. We have another in the oven. They immediately form it as a human. It's in sin. Now it has to be afforded the rights of personage. And then you've got the registration system that comes in on that, on the back of that. And then they need father to basically sign off the baby as cargo into the vessel, the trust, the deceased trust, a sea monster. Do you get what I'm saying there? Is it making sense how this game is actually working? But it's imperative, and this is going to be difficult for many. You've got to recognise that this Vatican corporate state, formed in 1929, is not the church. It's its antithesis. It's the antithesis of the doctrine of the church in its entirety. And, priests, vicars, even bishops, cardinals, maybe not cardinals, I don't know, but you've failed to recognise what's really been going on in the liturgy of it. Because, of course, you were dealing with the day-to-day. But, the Vatican Church has lost its flock, especially since the 70s, but not in South America. It's South America, and then it's got a building going on in China that is keeping this Vatican corporate state alive as if it was the original church. It's so important to this Vatican state that the South Americans don't get wind of this information, which is why Musk and Brazil are having a fallout. They need to start to censor South America before this becomes common knowledge to Catholics in South America. So you can see, it's not a foregone conclusion in the sense that they've lost a big chunk of the support, but they've still got another one they built in South American nations, and then the one that they're building in China. Now, I've done a few reports in the past where it's pretty clear that in this system, they've pretty much handed over the choosing of bishops in this Vatican corporate state to China. Because, of course, China is the New World Order system. They've already built it. That is it. It's now just a case of implementing it across the entire world. That's what they're doing. Facial recognition is on the streets. It's in the Asda. It's coming. It's on. It's happening as we speak. It's just... And Elon Musk is a major part of this game. And I have an interesting video that... it's of a nanny who was in America, and this is going way back, and she was told to expect 3 people from Africa to come over, and she was going to be looking after the child, and the child, they had to leave Africa because the child had done something exceptionally evil. So this nanny's waiting for 3 Africans to come. In fact, it wasn't. It was a mother, a grandfather, and a child. And so she brought up this child as the nanny. And as he's getting older, obviously she knew all these hoity-toity are coming in and out, because it were obviously, this is an high-level sort of a game up there. And she'd been worried about this child, thinking, there's things is not right about this. And obviously she's picked up on a lot of things that have been going on and the visitors that were coming, etc., over these years. And to the one particular day, she thought, I'm just going to ask him outright. So she asked this one particular woman that were very involved with this child, this family, and said, look, can I ask you a question? Is this guy the Antichrist? And the response was that the woman, no shock horror or anything like that, just went, no, but he's going to bring in the system that the Antichrist is going to use. Well, that's Starlink, is it? That's Neuralink. Everything that he's doing, X. Have you noticed this X? It's all moving to X. And doesn't that equate to 6 in numerology? So it all makes perfect sense that you can. And what's Elon Musk just done now? Now he's supporting Trump, and Trump has been classed as King Cyrus in Israel, and they've minted coins. So he's going to emancipate these fruitcakes in this no-hide system, and you're all going to be judged as humans. You're going to be decapitated from any legal rights whatsoever. That's the decapitation in the legal sense. Now, whether it moves on into the physical, who knows? But then you look at the Shriners, and you look at their symbolism, and it's clearly the Arabian sword chopping heads off. That's what they have on their aprons. And it's the Shriners, that system, and that carries forward the agreement made between King Richard the Lionheart and Saladin. And then you've got Arab royalties. I put it up the other week where he was saying, people, you in the West think you know Islam. You really haven't got a clue what it is, and that you really don't know what you're allowing. Expect major terrorist operations. Well, these terrorist operations, ISIS, ISIL, Hezbollah, Taliban, Mujahideen, all trained by who? The Jesuits, the CIA. That's what the CIA is. It's the Roman military intelligence operation, which runs MI5, it runs MI6, it runs the Mossad, and every intelligence agency on the planet. That is the empire. It never was an English empire. We only ever, our ancestors were shoved in the mills, the pits, and then expected to go and fight. It was never an English empire. It's always been the empire, and it shifted and moved to the inner city of London, as we've discussed, after the Civil War. And, these immigrants are coming over thinking they're fighting the empire. No, the empire has brought you here as humans, as monsters, sea monsters. Once you start to connect the dots in that sense, then you can start to see why we are where we are today, and why this legal system is so important. Because it's running monsters. It's there to protect the earth from all these monsters. Self-professed monsters. Ignorant or not, it's irrelevant. Ignorance of the law, as they say, is not an excuse. So it's imperative that the intelligence amongst us, doesn't matter what religion you class yourself as, what colour you are, what creed you think you are, it's imperative that we start to recognise this stuff. Now, hip-hop, for instance, with all this Diddy going on. So I watched an interview earlier in the week where one of the original rappers from back in the day was discussing the pitch that they had to them, which was, we've recognised your talent. Now, we represent a group of financiers who are building prisons across the West. We're building prisons. And we are the guys that want you, we're going to fund you as artists, and we want you to corrupt the youth to fill these prisons. And we want you to corrupt the youth with your lyrical content. And then when you've done a certain amount of years in your contract, we will give you shares in these prisons. So that was the initial pitch to these rappers that were building up across the US back in the day. That was the pitch. We're building prisons. We need you to make sure the kids fill them. So, is that not mind control? Of course it is. everything that's out there has been to corrupt the youth. Now, they can only corrupt the youth when they've destroyed the family. Because if dad's not there saying no, the state's in saying yeah. Well, mum's going to do exactly what she's told, isn't she? Because that's what females do. Or women, they do what they're told. Regardless of what wind and piss they are and they think they're fantastic and amazing. Actually, you've completely and utterly wrecked everything. But so have the males. Because the males were following this corrupt rap theme, thinking there was something they're not. And then all the while this has been going on, testosterone. In the 80s, in the male, it was averaging 500. The count, however they count the measure, it was registering 500. Now I can say yeah, it absolutely were, because I lived through the 80s. That was my time. And then in the 90s, it went down considerably until the 2000s. It's down to 250. So the males are not males. And that's diet. That's your shit, your processed food. I watched something today very clear saying don't drink distilled water because it robs the minerals from your body. Wash your food in it and cook your food in it by all means. But drinking distilled water is only 7 pH and it will rob your body of its minerals. So that's another point to keep in mind. Now I know people put salt in it. That's fine. That's only 1 mineral. So you've got to take these things into consideration, which is why I drink mineral water. It's full of minerals. And the proof in the pudding for me with this is when I first transferred, when I used to drink brews, obviously I put it in kettle. I thought, well, I'll just brew this in the kettle. But, 45 brews and the entire kettle were white with all the calcium and the minerals from this water. So you want natural water that nature's formed with the minerals. Then that's good to drink. But distilled water, it's no good to drink. But it's very good for cooking and such like. And these are things that need to be... Because if you don't move in that direction, then they're playing with the estrogen and loading you up with estrogen, which is demolishing the testosterone levels. And of course, testosterone isn't what we think either, but it has very specific functions in relation to how your body takes on minerals, takes on proteins, etc., etc. It's not just all about the male stuff, but it is. But it's more important than that in its function. And this is how they've managed to do this to everybody. It's quite worrying, but all you need to do is stop eating the shit. It means you've got to do a bit of effort, a little bit of work. I can't sit on TV for more than 20 minutes now because I have to think. Well, there you go. Because if you're not going to do that, you're screwed. You're screwed. And you're screwed because you've done it yourself, because you couldn't be asked, you couldn't be bothered. You thought everybody else is wrong and you're right because your teacher said. Well, if you've had an education since 1984... everything your teacher said is bullshit. And I'm not saying the education we had pre-1984 was perfect, but we got maths, English, physics, chemistry, biology, art, sports in all its forms. So by the time you left school, you had a plethora of knowledge-based data in which you could decide what you wanted to do. Geography, history, with all these concepts that we had in our minds, and we could choose which ones we wanted to move with. So they were just a platform really for you to decide. But today, I saw this with my offspring when I used to go in in fact I've got 3 recordings of an interview with the head teacher of my youngest, who basically explained in it that they don't teach him nothing. They're not teaching him anything. Skills. And then I tried to pull that out. What's a skill? Well, it were meaningless. And I've got those on video early on in this YouTube account. So if you want to look, just listen to what they're saying. Forget the nonsense that I've put on as the video. It's just going through the corporate side. But we're way beyond that now. Back then, that were important because it was just happening. But just listen to what is being said. And if only I could have got across to you her face when she realised what I was doing, when she realised I might be recording. It was an absolute pleasure because I despise this teacher. I think she was a Jewess, and she looked like a Parisian tart, the way she paraded around the school. And she was an evil bitch, let me say. Williams, she was called, Judith Williams. A right bad one. And yeah, I did battle for quite a while. They banned me from the schoolyard, blah, blah, because I was giving out leaflets, etc., etc. But that was another matter. I didn't allow them to ban me. I just said, I'm sorry, you can talk crap all day. I'm coming in here to pick up my offspring. So they tried everything going, but it just didn't work. But that final, the end to it, when I got her, but her face, when she realised, or potentially realised what I might be doing, oh, it were a picture. It were worth every bit of a garbage I had with her for a couple of years previous to that. But yeah, this is where it's at, folks. This is where it's at. It's about educating yourself to the point that you grasp this stuff. You understand what it is being said, so that you can understand what it is you're doing when you move against this in the system. It's so important. It's yeah, but you know this, you know. So I thought that were excellent. Found that today, and I thought perfect, because of course he goes into the fact that the American Congress are using this dictionary. Americans, wake up! This is why they're doing what they're doing in Florida. This is why they're doing to you what they're doing in Colorado, and they're not going to stop. We know it's, you know, they're not going to stop because you're all classed as humans. All the immigrants are humans, and they're all begging, Papa, give us your free money, give us your free money. Yeah, so there is no excuse. Nobody's doing anything to you that you're not giving them the right to do. That's the spiritual side of this. This is why the big cheese and his son are not coming to come back to help you. Nobody's coming to save you. If you want to bring what the man brought to us as an update, i.e. in law, then it has to be rebirthed through you. And you have to become it, and you have to exact it as rights. There's no guy coming back reincarnated with sandals on, a beard and long fluffy hair. It's not going to happen like that, people. Because, of course, if you're savvy and you know the church doctrine, it's very clear they don't accept reincarnation. How long has people been fooled by that one? No. If he's to come back, the essence of what he brought to you, the message from his father, you have to express it. You have to be it. You have to become it. Otherwise, it ain't coming back, people. And nobody's coming to save you. Yeah? Nobody. Right, I've had my gob off. So let's pick that up where we were, and then we'll get into this European stuff. Right, we got there, PY, yeah, cause Bob, yeah, clap your hands. Numero Laredo, fire, the smoke, and the happy face, and the evening. Good evening to you. Jerry, emitting, yep. We've got an octopus there, yep, exactly. Benefactor, a lower animal equals citizen. A city zenison, a city. It's all city gods. It goes back to Babylon. And the sons of gods are the sons of the emperor, who he put on as ruling each city. And it's all going back to city with MERS. He's just announced now that he's brought in all the stakeholders and the MERS to spend your tax money, giving it to the corporate. They're telling you. They're speaking the speak. It's just people don't get it. They're not seeing it properly. That's on us. Really, it is on us. Me says, we talk about certain words stuck in the box. Look outside the box and see that it's a whole language known as legal English that is foreign to English language. Absolutely. Well, it's legalese. You couldn't even class it as legal English, really, because it's a completely different language. Solvamist gives it the old wave. Hello, Solvamist. Good evening to you. Me says, create our own dictionary. We are creators. We don't need to. We just have to come back in sync with the correct language. That's it. And keep pushing and keep pushing. Jerry gives it the laughing. Bill Bob, I come from the Holy Land equal my mother's. I come from the Holy Land equals my mother's Holy Land. Yeah, well, interesting. The Lone Rizzler, evening all, evening Sean, evening to you, Lone Rizzler. Nouveau Laredo, thanks for speaking up, Sean, and all your research. We don't have a voice. Censorship going on, should be 2,000 people here. It's massive censorship, yeah, absolutely. Massive censorship, yeah. And it's so important that native-born Muslims in the West start to speak out and differentiate itself from these crazy imams, because they come straight out to sabotage Evi's cult, seriously. And so this is what I'm saying, we're all being battered by this, regardless of what religion we are. And it's once we see that, once there's enough people, then there's an energy. And it only takes 5% of people to come together. So that's blacks here, that's whites here, Muslims here. We need to come together, common ground. We need to find that common ground. And the common ground is that we're smart, we comprehend the game, we see the game, and we're not having it. That's the common ground. And it's irrelevant what creed or culture you came from before you recognise that actually that's not important. It's about sanity and educated intellect versus insanity, animal nature. So important that we get it. Mark says, evening all, and Sean, good evening, Mark. Oh, I've said that. Where are we? Natural law is unwritten and can't be changed. It's inherent in you. It's a kingdom within. It's natural. And this is the thing about the masculine energy. The more masculine you are, the more you're in tune with what is the creative force. Which means you're not asking permission. You don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. You'll do what you know needs to be done. And the female's supposed to be there to support that. That's how upside down everything's got, because the females think they're equal to the males. You're equal in the eyes of the Creator, but in terms of how we're supposed to operate down here, we're different. We're different. And this is why you females are having so much trouble now. The males have just said, sod this, yeah, for a game of soldiers. Who wants to marry a woman that can sod off and take the lot? Nobody. Nobody. It's a sad state of affairs. It really is. But we're there. That's how it is. Unfortunately. So look, all in a box is not on page. Precisely, but also think of it this way, me. When the Crown copyright comes in on these forms, it's not the content within the boxes that's copywritten. It's the structure of the form that's copywritten, not the data within it. That's worth knowing as well. Meander V, do you know who or what Yahuwah is? You mean, are you talking about the man we call Jesus? An update, an upgrade, a reminder of what the original laws were in relation to the Father of the beginnings. Who created the Elohim? So, we did this the other week, I don't know whether you catched it, but the correct interpretation of the Hebrew Genesis is incorrect, the one we have now, because the one that's correct, because it interprets it using Beth, which is the second letter. When you interpret it using Aleph, which is the first letter, it says a whole different game. And the Father of the beginnings, who created the Elohim. So Yahuwah or Yeshua came back from the original Father of the beginnings to say, look, you're all up your own ass, you're talking out your ass. The kingdom is within you because you are an image of that creative force. And in subduing the masculine energy, you're removing the ability to actually be that creative force. Because it doesn't need permission. It doesn't care what anybody else thinks. It cracks on. It doesn't give a shit about consequences either. Because it knows what it's doing. That's the masculine energy. And the feminine energy in its absolute is the same. In fact, in my experience, you know, courage that I've seen in this journey that I've been on, because there's been a lot of people help me in this madness. You want to see courage, and I mean courage, and I've seen that in females. They are just solid in that. Once they decide, and they're proper female, I'm not talking about women, crazy women, I'm talking about females. When they make a decision, that's it. Boom. So, you know, don't misunderstand what I'm saying in the sense I'm not belittling. We are equal, but we have different functions. Where are we there? Letters put together, says me. The Lone Rizzler, Nouveau Laredo. I just had to restart my phone as I couldn't get on the live here. YT are removing nearly every comment of mine, even dog training stuff. Oh, God. Well, they're trying to get rid of your animals now because, of course, these security boys are scared. They don't like doggies or cats. Have you seen cats when they kick off? There won't be a cat on your face. So, yeah, everything's going... They're moving against everything because you're a human. And it's so important that we recognise this. Benefactor, the day the pregnancy is recorded, the fruit of the womb, the concept. Well, the fruit of the womb becomes a human. Yeah, that's what they determine, and that's what's in sin. I mean, we did timelines earlier in the year, and we did it because we needed to see it, to undo it in a lot of sense, because whereas it's been presented that it's 0 to 1, that's the original calendar, actually that's not the case. Because the moment mum goes in and reports the pregnancy to this temple, it's counting. So that can't be correct in its present format. Not saying there's not something in the count, because timestamp is very important to these people and everything they do. And they wouldn't make such a fuss about it if it wasn't so important. But it's still murky. But as it's been presented, I think it's pretty clear today. The fact that we know now that it's a concept that's all important, that 0 to 1 doesn't carry. Where are we there? Okay. David says, evening Sean and chat Rooney. Good evening to you, David. Lex, I was wondering why my kettle's gone white from boiling spring water in it. I was worried it may be something else. No, that's the minerals coming out. Now, the way... I even went and bought a brand new kettle. I know this is going back years. But within about 3 days, it's full of this white stuff. Now, you're all right for a bit, but once it starts coming off in your brew tastes disgusting. The way to do it is pan it. You pan a brew. So put your mineral water in a pan, and of course, and when you've poured it, that pan will have minerals on the pan. But you're not coating your brew with minerals, because it does taste pretty disgusting. Now, I've started using Shilajit, and I've been using it for a month. Now, I have to say, on the third day, I felt a massive, and I mean massive, whoo of energy. I can't say that after that point have I noticed any other major thing, except that energy has kept going. And the importance of it would be that the fact that most of the foods you're eating today don't have the minerals in it anymore. So you're not getting the minerals you require from the food. Now, you know me, I always test everything first. Now, I believe there's different variations of it, but the one I'm using is that one. Now, it's not cheap. It's 25 quid a shot, but I'm finding it's lasting me 3 weeks. This is my second gig on it, and I'm finding it to be absolutely excellent. Now, it does do some of the things it says on the tin, i.e., I'm getting up in the morning with a morning glory like I haven't had for a long time. So its effects are real, and it's loaded with testosterone. So it's putting your testosterone back into balance as well. So I think it's just over a month now I've been at it. And I have to say, it's like going back 20 years. So make of that as you will, fellas. Now, I believe for the women, for females taking it, it also has a similar effect. So if we want to repopulate the earth, that might just be the way to give us a kickstart, is my opinion. Anyway, enough of that malarkey. So that's why your kettle's gone white, Lex. It's not a problem. However, if you do it in, you want gas though, you want to get a boil, proper boil for your brew. But honestly, get rid of the tea bags and get the tea leaves and strain it. And with the Evian, it's like drinking a brew that you used to have 30 years ago. It's delicious. But I don't drink brews anymore. I just have a coffee in the morning and coffee of an evening. That's it. And I have lattes, so there's no water in it anyway. So, but other than that, it's just Evian all the way until I find a spring that I can trust. Me says monster, nearly 14th monster, malformed animal or human creature afflicted with a birth defect, from Old French monstre, monster, monstrosity. And where have you got that from? Is that etymology? Where's that from, me? Martin says there's a difference between inorganic and organic minerals. Do you want to expand on that, Martin? And Recycling Gestapo says, yes, Sean. Not sure what you're saying yes to, but good stuff. Me says, carnivore, sardines for breakfast, grass-fed sirloin steak with butter twice a day. You cannot go wrong with sardines. They are absolutely loaded. I mean, if you give your dog sardines, its coat will be silky. If you give your dog garlic, it will not have fleas, ever. Yeah, but sardines and pilchards are absolutely loaded with goodness. And so if you want to get your minerals, you want to get your proteins, your irons, your metals and that you need, you cannot go wrong with sardines. In fact, I used to do them all the time. I don't tend to do them these days. Maybe I should reconsider that. Nouveau Laredo, thumbs up, good stuff. Jerry says, Beth is house. Beth is house. Okay. Well, Beth isn't Aleph, and it's a different translation completely if you're using the second letter as opposed to the first. All Hebrew begins with Aleph. And DJ from 88 says, good evening, Sean. Well, good evening to you. Now, I'm just gonna bang your tune on because I need to empty my nose because I listened to myself last week. If it were annoying for me to listen back to that video, it must have been disgusting for you. So my apologies for this horrendous nose I've got. I have been banging this Vitsy Mew, and I have to say, it works a bloody treat. So just let me sort my nose out, and just reminded of what we've got in as a government right now.
just a little bit. Work it 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 just a little bit.
Ooh, yeah, right, so that's my nose sorted out, thanks for that. Right, so, I mean, we'll not bore you to death with this. I'll just go through some of the main stuff of it, and of course, if it's your interest, you can always pick it up, and I'll put a link under the video. But Brexit, it was only there to satisfy the a majority in this country that knew exactly why we don't want to be a part of Europe. I can't understand why people don't see it. You know, that you look at what's happened in Ireland, for instance. That's European Union. You look at what happens in Sweden, in Germany, in France. That's the European Union. And we're not supposed to be in it, but we are. And we're governed by the European human rights, which is why they can't shut the gates. Or so they say. That's their excuse, of course. They have no intention of shutting the gates because they need these low-grade subcultures in here to cause the problems, while our militaries are tied up with NATO, and so of course the only route for them then for security would be pulling in the United Nations, which we don't want. Well, okay, let them come in, but they'll be armed. We just take them off them, and then we're armed. It's as simple as that. If that's what it comes to, that's what we do. You know, you can go, oh, or you can go, right, fuck this, we'll have that. Thank you very much. Because war's coming. War's upon you. Whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not. It's as simple as that. You know, and you estrogen boys out there, you can cry your eyes out all day, you like. Grow tits. But that's not going to help you any. You know, you're just going to look like a complete knob. Which is true, innit? Because you are. Right, so. Where are we? It's the Centre for European Reform and Hacklut. Now, Hacklut's an interesting gig. All intelligence malarkey, that. So, This were put together probably about 2009 or something like that, but then represented in this new website. So corporate intelligence forcing the EU Union. So the intelligence side of the corporate. So that's OEC. So what is the EU dream and who does it serve? In their ignorance, the average Brit has blown along with the wind, holding trust that the British establishment have only the interests of the British culture and morality as the prime motive. Little do they know. Yet after Brexit, they are beginning to see the fact the European Union is not its own monster. That even after the vote to leave the EU, politicians are dragging their feet, awaiting the next big global disaster, so they can revoke the vote under some form of national security issue. So obviously I've upgraded the forward on this after the Brexit vote, but the guts of this were written a long time ago. Direct involvement in all things domestic by the corporate state, which is a physical representation of the central banks, can be seen in part in the form of Hacklot, a UK-US corporate intelligence arm and offshoot to MI6. Quote, one other aspect of the Centre for European CER's function, suggested by the activities of several members, is to manipulate British democracy through public diplomacy. The UK government's PD is now run by the CER's Ian Hargreaves. MI6 offshoot, Hacklot, had the CER's Baroness Smith on its board. So you're back to the hoity-toits every single time. Yeah? Always comes back to these Medici aristocracy. And that's end quote. Quote, as has been noted in Private Eye, Maclay worked at LWT under John Burt and Mandelson. A career foreign official, he is a special advisor to the CER's Carl Bildt, CER being Centre for European Reform. Maclay was also an early member of BAP and is involved in Hacklot, the strategic intelligence firm, many of whose directors were formerly senior figures in MI6. Sir Anthony Hammond, the former Treasury Solicitor, who conducted the official inquiry into the Hinduja passports affair and let Mandelson off the hook, has a salaried position as the official legal advisor to Hacklot. End of quote. So this Hacklot is an important gig, and it's pretty much on behalf of the intelligence services running this shift to move us back into the EU. Yet more insight into the fact the committee controls the EU superstate comes from a trustee of the Doverton Trust, a high-level charity which, through such operations as the Trussell Trust, mandated by David Cameron, are now in control of all things poverty, with food banks and food voucher issuance. Now, there's those blues are links to reports that I put up way back in the day when they were setting these up. Doverton Trust were patron was Duke of Edinburgh, and the Trussell Trust is basically all the evangelical churches running the food banks. Okay. They didn't like it when we outed that because we outed the game before they even started, and they cried their eyeballs out about it. Quote, Mr. Christopher Wills, Chairman, Mr. Christopher Wills has 12,500 shares in the private intelligence outfit Hacklot and Company Limited. So then there's a link to it. I've done another report. Hacklot is a British intelligence agency, and there's Hacklot profile. Let me just see if these links work. Yep, that's a script. So there you get. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so these are my script accounts, by the way. Hacklot profile. Again, it's on script, because we always used to, when we used to do a lot of research back in the day, they'd follow us and delete stuff, so we always used to, first thing we'd do is screenshot it or PDF it, so that they couldn't get rid of it. And most of this stuff you will not find anymore on the internet, but you will find it on the platforms that I have all over the shop. Enron, you remember the Enron scandal, all part of that, Chelsea, it's a massive spying on Greenpeace. It's a really serious piece a gig is Hacklut. So if you're interested, it might be worth getting on there, downloading these documents before Scribd moves the same way as most of the internet. And I see that the time machine's down, it Wayback Machine's down as well, isn't it? Here we go. Hacklut's, yep, done that. Your office, right, so Hacklut's Christopher James wrote to Enron's Jeff Skilling, so that's the Enron scandal that included Bush's and all that, were a big American scandal. In an apparent follow-up to the email in August of that year, 2001, James expanded on what Hacklut could offer. Quote, "Your office has asked me to outline Hacklut's services. Rather than fall back on the usual corporate information that we have sent to you, to your people previously, I would say simply this. Hacklut is what you make of it. It places an unparalleled private intelligence network at the personal disposal of senior commercial figures." All right? That tells you everything about what Hacklut is. It's whatever you want it to be. It'll kill people, it'll take over, it'll do whatever you want. And it's only there for commercial figures, people that are big in commerce. And one more very, very sinister fact in relation to this operation, it connects with Kissinger-McClarty Associates. So that's Kissinger Associates as we know them today. The Centre for European Reform, and there's a link there, the Centre for European Reform and the British Crown and Commonwealth brings together Atlanticist, New Labour, neoliberal and neoconservative elements in a well-funded and promoted EU military industrial lobby. It aims to influence organisations such as the European Defence Agency and others and open up the defence market. Backers include Shell, Lockheed Martin, BP and JP Morgan. But it should really be viewed as an adjunct to the New Labour, particularly in connection to Peter Mandelson and David Miliband, the little bastard that's trying to steal our electricity and gas and turn it into a company and call it energy. Alright, so this is the same bunch we've got in here. But it's not just a Labour gig. They're all in it. The Crown. The Centre states that it is a think tank devoted to improving the quality of debate on the European Union. It is a forum for people with ideas from Britain and across the continent to discuss the many political, economic and social challenges facing Europe. It seeks to work with similar bodies in other European countries, North America and elsewhere in the world. The CER makes a point of bringing together people from the worlds of politics and business. Most of our meetings and seminars are by invitation only, they say, to ensure a high level of debate. A bit like the Bilderberg group there. Its main areas of interest are European Union budget, policies, foreign policy, reforming the EU's institutions, justice and home affairs, economic and finance, energy and environment. So now we can see him kicking in with that. And they've made you pay for it, this transition to corporate with the high hike of energy costs or gas and electric. Education and research. The Euro, security and defence policy, enlargement specifically on Turkey, neighbourhood policy, transatlantic relations, Russia, China, the Middle East and the Arab Reform Initiative. Okay, so they're all coming under this umbrella. There are no separation of countries anymore. They're all being controlled and governed by this bunch. The Arab Reform Initiative describes itself as a consortium of 15 key policy research centres from the Arab world with partners from Europe and the United States, working to mobilise an Arab research capacity to advance knowledge and promote a homegrown programme for democratic reform. The US... See, this is another thing. The Arab nations all over the place, they're thriving. Do you know why? Because they've got rid of all the criminals into Europe. All these fruitcakes that they're pumping in here are all the fucking idiots that these Arab countries don't want. Or Islamic countries don't want. Fucking hell, you can't make this stuff up, seriously. The US partner here is the US Middle East Project under the guidance of an international board chaired by General retired Brent Scowcroft. Proper shitbag. That includes Carla A. Hill's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, the President's Homeland Security Advisory Council, Lee H. Hamilton of the FBI, and CIA's Advisory Panel, Ephraim Halevi, the former head of the Mossad, 1998-2002, Sam Nunn, Chairman of the Board of Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, Brent Scowcroft, who coined the term the New World Order and is Vice Chairman of Kissinger Associates, Incorporated. The Chairman of the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board under President George W. Bush, 2001 to 2005, and also a board member of the Center for Strategic and International Studies and the Atlantic Council in the United States. Now, obviously these are old schoolers, but Rahm Emanuel is part of this. These guys, he were Obama's handler on behalf of Kissinger and what's his name? He's dead now. Zbigniew Brzezinski. So they've got new faces now, but they're doing the same thing. And Rahm Emanuel has just been in Turkey. Is it Turkey? Telling them what the crack is. Is it Turkey? I'm not sure actually. It might be somewhere else. But he's been very busy. But he was the man telling Obama what to do. The Arab Reform Initiatives run by Bassam Kodmani, the programme officer of the Ford Foundation in Cairo and an advisor to the Oxford Research Group. The CER are also partners in the New Atlantic Initiative, which involves several neoconservative organisations, such as the Project for the New American Century, and is a spin-off from the Institute for European Defence and Strategic Studies, funded by the American Enterprise Institute. The CER's Charles Grant launched his Healing and Transatlantic Rift as a New Atlantic Initiative event at the AEI Holsletter Conference Centre, named after the arch-neoconservative Albert Holsletter, in September the 12th, 2003, introduced by Radek Sikorski. A significant CER presence can be seen at the international conference relaunching the Transatlantic Partnership organised by the Aspen Institute Italia and the New Atlantic Initiative, with a decidedly neoconservative orientation and sponsored by the NATO Public Diplomacy Division and the American Embassy in Rome. According to the CER's 2007 report, it was founded at the annual British-German Königswinter Conference in 1996 by David Miliband and Nick Butler, a senior figure in BP and a key figure in setting up the British-American project, which is overseen by Paul Wolfowitz and the CER's Lord George Robertson, who of course was the head of NATO. Lord George Robertson, yeah? The main administrators of the centre have been Charles Grant and Mark Leonard, and the centre's advisory board overlaps with those of think tanks such as Demos and the Foreign Policy Centre. It has acted as a venue for the promotion of US neoliberalism and neoconservatism, specifically in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq. Although it has European focus, it allows in a long line of elite transatlantic security and defence networks, which form a component of the complex meditation of US policy positions in relation to Europe, NATO, and other European institutions. In 1995, as the CER was being assembled, it was rumoured that Lord Gilmore, head of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, would run it while working for Tony Blair. The Independent described the CER as Mr. Blair's private think tank on Europe and noted that playing key roles in the centre's establishment are Jonathan Powell and David Miliband. Mr. Blair's head of research, Peter Mandelson MP, Labour's principal spin doctor, has also been among those who have helped the new body to birth. Gilmore, who had joined the Prudential Assurance, Vickers, and was senior advisor to PZW, was quoted as saying that the centre would involve young people, not the hoary old usuals. We're going to engage in serious discussion, not the exchanges of haboo, which too often take place. But Gilmore seems to have backed out because the CER was attached to a political party, but appeared in the run-up to its launch a year later. Just as several trustees of the CER joined the Blair court in its early days, Lord Simon, for example, so too did some of the CER's administrators, such as the CER's treasurer, Julian Eccles, who became a special advisor, having previously been a public affairs consultant with the international public relations consultancy Hill and Knowlton, specialising in broadcasting, lottery and IT issues. Eccles was previously Director of Communications and Corporate Affairs at B-Sky B. By 2000, the CER's board included a range of individuals who featured widely on a number of elite think tanks and gatherings, and whose common denomination is a connection to the US large multinationals, and with some achieving high places in their respective governments or institutions which intervene and condition government policy. One of the CER's main difficulty was representing the interests of George W. Bush administration and the neoconservative tendency to Europe and the UK. The list follows the report's description of the board's occupation and positions. For a fuller version, see the individual profiles. Percy Benovic, former chairman of AstraZeneca and numerous US companies including General Motors and DuPont. Carl Bildt, former Swedish Prime Minister and first non-US member ever of the Board of Trustees of RAND, known for his implementation as far-reaching liberalisation and structural reforms in Sweden and the modernisation of its welfare system. Nick Butler, Chair, Group Vice President for Policy Development at BP from 2002 to 2006 and the founder of the British American Project, as well as being well connected in New Labour circles. Lord Durrendorf, former warden of St Anthony's College, Oxford, a trustee of the Ford Foundation, a policy advisor of the Social Market Foundation, which shares its Tufton Street address with the CER. He is on the board of governors of the Anglo-American elite think tank, the Ditchley Foundation. Vernon Ellis, international chairman of US accountancy and consultancy giant Accenture, with responsibility for the firm's public relations, community involvement, volunteer and foundation activities. John Gray, Professor of European Thought, LSE, London School of Economics. A visiting professor at Harvard University. Gray is part of the European Institute at the London School of Economics with the CER's Maurice Fraser, who also includes Roger Liddell of Peter Mandelson's think tank Policy Network. In The Independent, Gray wrote of neoconservatism at the heart of New Labour. Neoconservatism is not the most recent variety of conservatism. It is a new type of politics that can emerge at any point on the political spectrum. In Britain, neoconservatism's political vehicle was not the Conservative Party, but the new party that Blair created when he seized the Labour leadership. His career in politics is testimony to the power of neoconservatism ideas, which guided his most fateful decisions. So, what's this Bolshevik system doing now with Keir Starmer? Pretending it's on the side of the Muslims, while it's fully in support and operating for Israel. Okay, so you dumbasses that thought you were going for Palestine. How thick? See, that's what happens. If you start to accept the politics of foreign powers over and above your own, you're going to get shafted. Because you're thick. I'm talking to people that voted in Labour thinking they were doing something good. So all you Muslims that voted in for free money, fucking dumb doesn't cover it. Where are we? In The Independent, Gray wrote of neoconservative that yeah, no, I've done that. Yeah. His career in politics testimony to the power of the neoconservative ideas which guided his most fateful decisions. Blair was a neoliberal by default, but a neoconservative by conviction. Neoconservatism diverges from neoliberalism at crucial points, and it is specifically neoconservative beliefs that shape Blair's view of the world. Unlike neoliberals, neoconservatives do not aim to return to an imaginary era of minimum government. They perceive that the social effects of free markets are not all benign and look to government to promote the virtues the free market neglects. So that's big state Bolshevism incorporating capitalism. So you can see in this new Labour, you've got the merging of both socialism and capitalism. And now it's back because everybody thinks that capitalism just belongs to the Tories. Lloyd Hannay, former UK ambassador to the UN and the EU. Hannay was a minister at the British Embassy in Washington in 1984 to 1985 and a member of the 2004 UN Secretary-General's high-level panel on threats, challenges and change that called for an expanded Security Council. Ian Hargreaves was a Director of Corporate and Public Affairs at BAA plc, editor of the New Statesman and the Independent, Deputy Editor of the Financial Times and Director of BBC News and Current Affairs. So you call the BBC, this is what's running it. Hacklut. Honestly. But moved on to run the UK government's public diplomacy propaganda. And there's a list of toss bags. Look at it. It's Lord Simon of Hyersbury. Ooh. Medici. Peter Sutherland. Yeah. Dame Pauline Neville-Jones. Lord George Robertson. Dame Pauline Neville-Jones. Chair Quinitech plc. Kinetic, which runs the British government's secret military laboratories and was set up by the MOD to work with the Carlyle Group to run DERA, the British government's Defence Evaluation and Research Agency. The CIA did much the same thing with Incotel, Inc. Okay? You see? And that's Dame Pauline Neville-Jones. So you'd think she was Welsh. No, she's not. She's a Medici aristocrat. Career member of the British Diplomatic Service, foreign advisor to John Major from 91 to 1904, chair of the Joint Intelligence Committee, which overseen information from MI5, MI6, DIS, GCHQ, political director of the FCO, IISS, with Blix above, and also a Harkness Fellow Governor at the Ditchley Foundation. Ditchley Foundation is like Tavistock in America, and the BBC. Documents such as 2005, a compact between the United States and Europe, signatories Dame Pauline Neville-Jones and others propose that the United States and the European Union shall support the establishment of an independent foundation for democracy in the Middle East and jointly contribute 100 million a year over the next 5 years to its activities. Who runs the EU? This seems to have emanated from the CER, which Neville-Jones is an advisory board member, along with other elite decision makers of Atlantis' tendencies, with a penchant for adopting the fashionable US soft power approach, together with support for more conventional forms of power. You see, the way the Holy See, which has never been able to capture Europe completely, has gone about it is by taking over the US with the imperial British Empire that it controls, and then coming back to destroy Europe. That's the agenda of the empire, the Holy See families. The United States and the European Union shall support the establishment of an independent foundation for democracy in the Middle East. Yeah, blah, blah, done that. This seems to have emanated from the CER, of which Neville-Jones is an advisory board member, along with other elite decision makers of Atlantis' tendencies, with a penchant for adopting the fashionable US soft power approach, together with support for more conventional forms of power. Although it cannot be said that CER is a neoconservative organisation as such, to quote Charles Grant, every 6 months the CER and other think tanks organise a round table that brings together European and American diplomats and thinkers, and this included the 2003 Future of the Transatlantic Relationship, which included William Crystal. Now, probably all of these names are not big to most people today, but this is all the stuff that we were all into back in the day because they were the players and the past players. A 2002 Washington meeting of the US-European Forum organised by the Brookings Institute and the Centre for European Reform included in its audience 7 political directors. As one senior US official noted, in trying to explain the philosophy behind the apparent belligerence of the US diplomacy to a group that included the political directors of the British, French, Germany and Italian foreign offices, the Bush administration was determined from its first day to break with Bill Clinton's weak sentimentalized view of the world. Clinton wanted the world to love America. He failed. Bush wants America to be respected and, if necessary, feared. Well, I don't know. Clinton annihilated Yugoslavia. I don't think he were loving anything. People forget that. Bill Clinton annihilated Yugoslavia, which, of course, was part of the planning set up by Hitler before he attacked Russia. Yeah, so Bill Clinton carried that aspect out of it. One other aspect of the CER's function suggested by the activities of several members is to manipulate British democracy through public diplomacy. The UK government's PD is now run by the CER's Ian Hargreaves, MI6 offshoot Hacklett, and the CER's Baroness Smith. On its board, the British-American Project for the Successor Generation, which itself was a component of US public diplomacy in the 1980s, was, along with the CER itself, set up by Nick Butler. In this context, we would also mention the business-funded think tanks involving Hargreaves, Derendorf and Haskins. Others involved in the Atlanticist programme, such as George Robertson, also joined the CER. In the words of their 2002 report, the CER say they make a point of bringing together people from the world of politics and business. Who that might be is indicated by their meetings and seminars, which are described as invitation-only events, to ensure a high level of debate, and the ends to which it seeks to propagandise strongly relate to the arms industry and political influence, particularly that of the interests of the USA, and where they entwine with the European one, as noted. The majority of the CER directors are either directors of a US company or were educated there or have some other financial connection. So, clearly it's the military-industrial complex is what this is, and Hacklett is the intelligence arm that pretty much administers it. The CER's 2000... The latter assertion is questionable given the presence of the German Marshal. Oh, wait a minute. The CER's 2002 report states it provided private papers and briefings that business people, senior officials, ministers and commissioners asked to provide. But they make a point of saying that their work is funded by donations from the private sector and that it has never received money from governments or EU institutions. The latter assertion is questionable given the presence of the German Marshall Fund of the US and extensive reports linking the organisation to New Labour. The reason this distinction was made was that it dates from the period when the processing of influencing elite decision-making by insider lobbying, which would seem to be the CER's purpose, was to the fore with Greg Palast's evidence. And he says, this is Palast, he says, New Labour's Lobbygate. Many of the CER's small group of people have later joined governments or EU institutions. But questions as to why senior officials, ministers and commissioners get something for nothing remain. And a more important question is, why is the CER utterly dependent on the donations of its funders, which mostly have connections with the advisory board, such as Accenture, APCO, AstraZeneca, BAE Systems, which was a company with 5,000 employees and now has 60,000. BAT, BP, British Bankers Association, BT, Chubb Investment Services, Daily Mail and General Trust, Deutsche Bank, Diageo. Now, Diageo is an interesting, it's alcohol. And Diddy and his problems. See, when they get... So we said with the rappers originally, they were pitched at, we invest in prisons and we're going to give you shares. Now, as these big figures rise up, like Diddy, Jay-Z, they're given brands, specific alcohol brands, right? That's showing you that level. Now, Diddy was given a brand by Diageo. And last year, Diddy decided that Diageo were downplaying his brand and sued him. Now, that's breaking the rule of the big club. Hence, his troubles. However, we also know it's a diversion, and we also know that Hollywood and entertainment in its entirety as a Western thing has to be destroyed, and that's also what it's a part of. But Diageo is very important in respect of this current Diddy fiasco. EDS, The Economist, Express Dairies, German Marshall Fund, GKN, GlaxoSmithKline, Goldman Sachs, KPMG, Lockheed Martin, Merck, Northern Foods, Pearson, Portland Place Capital, Price Waterhouse Coopers, Telecom Italia, Tesco, Thales, Unilever, United Utilities, UPS, Weber Shandwick, Adamson and the WPP Group. What do they get for their money? Who acts for the top FTSE companies? The staff of the CER have done well with their proximity to power. Charles Grant, the director, was appointed to the British Council and was a prospective Labour candidate. Heather Grab left to join the European Commission, working in the cabinet of Enlargement Commissioner Olli Rehn. Stephen Everts went to the cabinet of Javier Solana. The EU's foreign policy in the Council of Ministers, Kitty Usher, having worked as a special advisor in the Department of Trade and Industry, was selected as Labour Party candidate in a safe parliamentary seat and subsequently caught out in the expenses swindling. Alexandra Ashbourne has built a successful career as a defence consultant. Edward Burneman worked in the Prime Minister's Strategy Unit before moving to the Treasury. And Ben Hall is one of the Financial Times political reporters. So, all these now political people in the EU Commission, EU government, our government, US Congress, Senate, are all coming out of this intelligence arena. This is why this game goes on and it moves on. No matter what is said, these are the people moving it. And that's the same with the entire bug script that's just gone down as well. Now they've got rid of a big chunk of people that were anti-Europe, and they hope to get young ones that don't know their ass and their elbow to start to vote and get us back into the EU. We would group the companies into various patterns. UK and US arms companies and manufacturers would include AstraZeneca, BAE System and Lockheed Martin, two of the main public relations organisations. Now remember, Lockheed Martin took the 2011 UK census. Two of the main public relations organisations, Weber Shandwick Adamson and the WPP Group, appear so it is reasonable to assume that the CEO engages with these PR companies and some of their clients. That means quite legitimate suspicion could be cast on Ambassador Lader, the chairman of the WPP Group, and his very public performance on Newsnight. Dame Pauline Neville-Jones, who used the incident to attack the BBC reports on the war, is debt, since the company's generosity enables her to see her advice carried out via the CER. Three right-wing mainstream media companies, although Pearson published many titles, including the Financial Times, feel the need to support the CER's endeavours: The Economist, Pearson Daily Mail and General Trust. We can also identify the three main consultants. Now, just let me... Pearson. You remember UKIP was took over by Malcolm Pearson? That's Pearson's. I've talked about Adelphi House, and next door to it is Shellmax House. Pearson Publishing is in there. Okay, so this is what we all goes back to Adelphi House. Okay, everything. John Adams Street gang, as I call them. We can also identify the three main consultants: Price Waterhouse Coopers, KPMG and Accenture. 5 representatives of financial capital dovetails with the security industry: Portland Place Capital, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Chubb Investment Services, British Bankers Association and APCO, founded in 1984. APCO Associates Incorporated, the Washington-based parent of APCO UK, has a long record of providing lobbying services. Its Washington office has a staff of over 100, including former politicians, US ambassadors and Capitol Hill staff, including Richard V. Allen, formerly with the Institute for European Defence and Strategic Studies mentioned above. As senior counsellor, APCO noted of themselves, given the expertise of APCO consultants in the Middle East affairs and with the key US government agencies involved in the contracting process, including the Agency for International Development and the Defence Department, APCO is well positioned to help identify contract opportunities, navigate the complex award process both in Washington and in Baghdad, and position clients with major contracting parties and the US government's key appointees in Baghdad. And much more of it. Oh, good grief, there's tons of it. So you get the picture, don't you? Let me just see. You're getting the picture of what it is now is back in under this Bolshevik system. They're not friends of Islam. They're using Islam. It's a 100% Zionist operation, is New Labour, as was the past Tory bunch. So I'll put this up underneath. There's a lot of links in it. You get your Fabian Societies involved. Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, Lord Douglas Hurd, which is Tories, Baroness Margaret J, Lord Tugendhat, Michael Maclay, Pearson's, British Council, Lord Dennis Stevenson. They're all in there. It's nothing to do with party politics. This is Crown agents. As I've said, the cabinets are chosen by the Privy Council. They're all in it. They're all in it. John Britt, Mandelson, yeah, all in there. It's just one big happy intelligence club, and we've all been shafted. Baroness Elizabeth Smith, the wife of the late Labour leader, John Smith, she's in it. So Anthony Hammond, Induja Passports affair was, anyway, but Anita Roddick's Body Shop, yeah, Demos, climate change education under the Fourth Reich, BP is well represented on the board of the CER. Heckler also spied on Anita Roddick's Body Shop. Okay, sorry, she's Roddick is also on the Demos board, so she's involved. The Atlantic Council, blah, 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 blah. So, Committee of Peace through NATO. I could look connection again. Lord Carrington, Brian Crozier's days. I've got lots of information on there. Lord Carrington, of course, was a partner with Kissinger at Kissinger Associates, and Lord Carrington, Peter Carrington, was the handler of Margaret Thatcher for this group. And, you know, the guy was worshipped by the baby boomer elderly people back in the day because they believed that he were on their side. Paul Foot, ideological pillar of New Labour, Neil Kinnock, Katinka Birch, Simon Tilford, Philip White. There's just tons of them. CIA funded Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. They just propagandise you from every orifice, and you think you're getting something good, but actually they control everything. Robert Dover, I'm not sure who he is. European Allies, blah, 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 Prime Minister. Bill Jackson, Kosovo there, which was basically NATO's Black Ops import and export centre after the Yugoslavian war, especially for heroin, coming out of Afghanistan. Charles Grant, Secretariat, Charles Grant, Director of the Centre for European Reform, spent a great deal of time discussing these issues with the SCO, MOD and Cabinet Office officials, particularly with the policy units of the MOD, FCO and the European Secretariat of the Cabinet Office, as well as with Tony Blair's personal political advisor, Roger Liddell. For Dover, the evidence is that Liddell was impressed by Grant's case for European defence integration, and Liddell conveyed his arguments to the Prime Minister, and the policy was taken forward. So they're really big on a European defence force. Trump's pretty much saying he might let go of NATO. That'll get shoved in right quick, wouldn't it? Guardian's Michael White as describing Grant as part of Blair's inner circle and suggesting that the end of the setting St. Malo Accord involving the French and UK governments as a common foreign and security policy was inspired by Grant. Charles Grant and Liddell and Stephen Waugh were signatories of the joint letter treaty charts the course for the European in support of the EU Reform Treaty. That's when they were trying to get the Lisbon Treaty and getting it changed. Demos, Ian Kearns, Deputy Director, Institute for Public Policy Research, Mark Leonard, Executive Director, European Council on Foreign Relations, Roger Liddell, Vice Chair, Policy Network, Roland Rudd, Chairman, Business for New Europe, Sir Stephen Wall, Patrick Diamond, Michael Van Hulten, Burson Morstella. I mean, it's just massive. There's Kenneth Clark, Michael Ethley. We've got CR's office at Tufton Street, Westminster, which they shared with the Tory Reform Group, which contains Michael Esseltine, Kenneth Clark, Lloyd Hunt, Lloyd Hurd, Chris Patton, Sir Malcolm Rifkin, Sir Tim Sainsbury, and a host of other top Conservatives. The office is also used by the Action Centre for the Europe, which gathers together Lloyd Carrington, Lloyd Howe, Lord Britton, Kenneth Clark, Stephen Dorrell, Chris Patton, Lloyd Hunt, and so on. The Conservative Group for Europe, much the same lineup, are also tucked in there at number 11. The European Movement's offices are down the road, and so are those of the Social Market Foundation. The Adam Smith Institute also occupy Tufton Street, and their address is just around the corner at 14 Great College Street, Westminster. And then you've got an absolute ton of references there. So it's so important that we understand that this, this idea of Brexit, it was never their intention to get us out. It was just to shut us up, or at least shut up while we still had a big plethora of older school folks who knew quite well why we mustn't go anywhere near the European Union. So just a reminder of a lot of data that's not out there anymore, and I know that they don't like it, they don't want it out there, so let's get it out there. And back to you guys, where we finish off. There's a difference between inorganic and organic. Yep. Sardines. Let's build a tent, says Benefactor. DJ from 88, good evening, Sean. I think that's where we left up. Martin says, when the plant takes up the mineral, it is changed from inorganic to organic. So that's water. Again, we're talking. Nouveau Laredo in Phoenician, Jerry. B is house. Jerry says, and there is where the human rights are being used against us. Well, only if you invoke them. And you remember, they were encouraging you to do that. And they make it out that our entire legal system is stuck because of the European human rights legislation. But we're supposed to be out of Europe. Well, Brexit were never implemented, were it? Just a blag. Ulick says, hey, Sean, Jerry and chat. Hello, Ulick. Kieran Martin, Howowitz, Sean, Gary, Ulrich. Hello there. Me says, this is the sound of hardcore uproar. More powerful than you could possibly imagine. Feel this. Go on, lads. The Lone Rizzler. Martin says, we were told a couple of weeks ago that there wasn't enough soldiers to defend the country, and that we will need to fight. But presently, we cannot be trusted to own a gun. Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. If it kicks off, we'll have to get guns. We don't need to know who trusts us, because the ones who don't trust us are the ones who are going to be wanting to shoot. And I'm being naughty. Flippant, of course. It's all just, satire. We're on satire when we talk about stuff like that, of course, We're not encouraging anyone to be naughty yet. Where are we there? The moment you realise there is a duty to disclose and they have failed to disclose, you have a claim. You do. But the important... Now, this is where I am with this court case, in that, they're all pulling together because they think they're all going to hold each other's back because they're all together in these courts. Now, I'll give a notice to the court that criminal behaviour is going on with these tenants. They shit themselves, run off when this examination didn't happen. But this is the importance of using special delivery. You get a code, and that code is registered immediately in Geneva with the UPU. So you can bring in the UPU on breach of contract. They don't have the best mates, do they, in the courts on that one? You see what I'm saying? You've got to think. You've got to think when you're doing these games. The offence is covered under Section 3 of the Fraud Act 2006. Fraud by failing to disclose information is a criminal offence that occurs when someone dishonestly fails to disclose information they are legally required to disclose. You quite correct me, absolutely. Jerry says they shut the High Court in Ireland down because of an attempt to bring such a claim. UPU. Ulick, what's the story? They be new, Jerry, says Ulick. Me says public and private don't mix. They don't. Those in the justice system. Yeah, well, the guy one of the guys that I'm dealing with, he went to court and we gave him all private data. They couldn't hear it. They thought, just get adjourned. So tying them up in litigation in essence, whereas they can't move forward with it. The other one is a different matter because they don't go to court and so they just railroad it. But what I've done is isolate 4 people as individuals in the private as liable for their own actions. Yeah, that's the interesting part about this. You know, you're not putting them all together, groupie. You're isolated for what you do. You're isolated for what you do. You're isolated for what you've done. And you're isolated for what you've done. And you're paying a bill of 4 million. That's the game that's going on with this court case. It's quite, yeah, it's insidious. But this is where you've got to go. Now, for UPU is the key. Where are we there? Public and private domain. Those in the justice system. Ulick McGee, the interview is on a channel called Irish Media Wars. Kira says, just mention you in a post on that video, Ulick. There we go, Guy Love, thanks, Technical. Well, I don't know what way you were fixed with sharing you and your Penny's Android. What? Anyway, click the link. Press the like button. And they also do Island Census, Livestream, blah, 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 blah. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will bid you good night. Hope you have a good week. Thanks for joining. Thanks, mods, for modding. And thanks for taking part. And I will say, as I always do, till the next time.
electronic engineering.